During 2009 to 2010, 85% of public schools recorded that one or more of these incidents of violence, theft, or other crimes had taken place, amounting to an estimated 1.9 million crimes. This shows that school violence is a major problem.
What kind of violence have you seen occur in schools?
Typically, we see violence comes in all different shapes and sizes and levels. The most common violence that you see, I think, is I would call it more ignorant than violence itself, what we consider physical violence. Because I think that a lot of times tends to be the causation. Whenever you see a physical manifestation of violence, a lot of times that's what what happens, but to truly understand why it happens, usually there's a backstory, there's a cause, there's a series of circumstances. As a police officer, I recognize whether it's inside of a school or out, the situation we get called to is very rarely about what happened there in those couple seconds or a minute or two. It's usually about what happened prior. There was some build up to it.
Okay. Do you believe this is a prevalent issue within the school?
I think there's always a chance in school. Again, you're dealing with a lot of issues in a school. Whenever you throw any large group of people together in a confined space, you're going to have issues. And now you have, and this is no offense to you, but when you throw in a little bit of lack of temperance, you guys haven't really learned life skills and everything yet totally to deal, problem solve, to cope, to survive, and you're being thrown new situations. Age, in other words, I think plays a role in it. Just because you tend to be a little bit more rash than most older people do. My generation, you also can be very impulsive, and sometimes we think you guys are very mature, but you can be kids in general can be impulsive. And then when you throw them in together with other peers, the golden rule I have: the more friends you're around, the lower your intelligence tends to go. That's a universal truth, I think, even for myself. My wife tells me all the time.
Okay.
You have peer pressures that succumb to. Again, if someone tries to show you up, what are you going to do? That can push things to a different level. There's all different triggers, all different responses and nuances that come into play, especially in a school environment.
What do you believe can be done to prevent any type of school violence from occurring? Is there anything specific a school can do?
Well, I think the biggest thing that you can do, again, the school takes obvious actions. That's why I'm here in the school. They have rules and they have reporting policies. They put cameras in. They try to address the physical plant security issues first. However, one of the biggest things I always tell anyone that can do is be an advocate for themselves and someone else. I give you guys here in this school a lot of credit. I mean, I don't think we tolerate as a culture a lot of those build-up things. I mean, the bullying as much, although it's prevalent here. I don't think we tolerate it as much. If we see someone picking on someone else, if we see someone trying to physically attack someone, I'd like to think that majority of us here in the school, to different demographics, different environment, we don't stand for that as much. Being an advocate, standing up for that person. By doing that, you're standing up for yourself. Those skills needed to communicate with one another. We're hesitant to talk things out, to communicate, to listen. Not just to tell someone what the problem is, but to listen to their views on it. And we interpret things a lot differently as well. I think mainly because of this. Again, you talk to this, it spreads out with communications, but this is so impersonal and still it's a good way to tell someone, to share something with somebody, but it's a terrible way to communicate.
Okay.
Because there's no emotion to it, there's no feeling. You and I have an issue. If I tell you that on the phone, you can interpret it any way you want. I can interpret your response any way I want. Versus you and I can sit down and say, hey, I didn't mean what we said, this is what I was feeling. You can't get that with technology nowadays.
What do you believe leads kids to becoming the most violent school? Is it the technology or simply
the most violent
students?
school? I don't know. I think any school has a potential for that. Because you
sorry.
think the most violent issues, we're talking.
Sorry. Let me rephrase the question. Actually, I was asking, what do you believe leads kids to becoming violent?
It's like socioeconomic class or urban issues.
Or
or
is
things
it
like
that's-
that.
It depends on where you are. Again, what are your triggers? What are your social triggers are huge. Social pressures are huge. I think your challenges to that. Like here, I don't necessarily think we have as big of an issue of physical violence as we do of, like when you're talking even bullying and things of that nature. I think our issues of have and have nots is bigger than some of the other things you see in different demographics and larger, more urban communities. I mean, again, it's here, I think I said to another group, our issue, do we have issues with racial tensions and things of that nature, ignorance in that respect? Absolutely, anywhere does. But I think, again, it's less tolerated here because we're very fortunate to live where we are, and we see that we have a lot of people that will stand up for someone like that. We see that as disturbing, but yet we still hold those same social prejudices, nonetheless.
Is there a large difference between other schools you've seen compared to Southern Lehigh?
Depending on the populations, yeah. The more urban you get, again, obviously, the more urban you get, whenever you have a population that grows, you have higher instances of crime in general. I mean, from my standpoint, you look at our reports that we do versus Allentown, you can't compare our crime rates and our crime statistics to that of a city, an urban population, because the population is so different. Our population here is somewhere between 15 and 20,000, depending on which census data. Probably a little bit more now since the last census data was completed. But look at Allentown, you're talking hundreds of thousands of people together in a small space of similar size. Again, the larger the mass of people, the tighter knit communities, the more issues are potentially going to arise. Again, just even on a home level, if I don't see my neighbor and you're 3 acres away, how much of a problem can I have with you? How much of a chance is there to interact? The closer you get put together, the bigger the issues. But I think that the crimes tend to take a larger scope, a larger presence in the more urban communities that you go.
Okay. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
That was great.
Violent school threats have increased by 158% from 2010 to 2011. Not only is school violence a form of bullying, but bullying also is one of the main causes of school violence. As seen here, 86% of students said that other kids picking on them, making fun of them, or bullying them causes teenagers to be lethal or violent. And one theory why the fatal Columbine shooting took place was because the 2 gunmen were bullied in school and seeking for revenge. This is a serious issue because bullying is so prevalent throughout school. As seen here, 71% of students report bullying as a problem at their school, and over 3.2 million students are victims of bullying each year. This bullying can then lead to school violence and other serious things.
By age 14, less than 30% of boys and 40% of girls will talk to their peers about bullying. Over 67% of students believe that schools respond poorly to bullying, with a high percentage of students believing that adult help is infrequent and ineffective. This shows that bullying victims feel as if they have nowhere to turn to. Not only can bullying cause school violence, but suicide as well. Suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among young people, resulting in about 4,400 deaths per year according to the CDC. For every suicide among young people, there are at least 100 suicide attempts. Bully victims are between 2 to 9 more times likely to consider suicide.
What differences have you seen from the previous school you were at compared to Southern Lehigh?
Definitely, in general, students here at Southern Lehigh are very respectful and polite and follow directions very well. The language is a little bit better here. Not nearly as many fights. There were multiple fights a week sometimes at Liberty. Matter of fact, my son goes to Liberty. Last Tuesday there were 7. So that's a big difference. The students here, although lots of students have challenges and problems, very different types of challenges here as compared to Liberty. The poverty has a big impact on students' performance and behavior. Socioeconomic impact has a lot of far-reaching consequences.
Okay. Do you believe that school violence was a major issue needing to be addressed there, compared to the issue here?
I think school violence is an issue everywhere. It's just how extreme it is.
Yes.
I think there are students with mental illnesses at all types of schools, urban and rural and suburban. I think there are students who get into fights everywhere. It's just the frequency. Plus the size of the school is so much bigger, so you have more kids that you're dealing with at a Liberty High School. Fewer students here result in fewer incidents.
Yeah. Do you believe school violence is an issue at Southern Lehigh?
I do. I think it's different. I think there are different ways of expressing anger and violence. I think cyber bullying, because of your access to a lot of technology and the social media.
Everyone has the iPhones and the internet.
Yeah,
It's easy.
you know, with all the technology that's around, so there's a different type of violence. There's a different type of harassment, depending on what access you have.
Okay. What do you believe can be done to prevent school violence from occurring?
Well, I always prefer to be proactive instead of reactive. So teaching and training and supporting students from a very young age. I do believe that high school, a lot of habits have already been established. You can undo those habits, but it's much harder the older you are. So establishing good habits and respectful behavior and consistent rule enforcement from a very, very young age certainly helps. Support of the community is huge. Family support is huge. It's much easier to work with students and correct behavior when there's support from the home. And that's a big,
That's one of the problems that sometimes the poverty doesn't allow for.
yeah, a lot of single families and
Do you think is the main difference between Southern Lehigh and Liberty? You might have already touched this.
the size makes a huge difference. It's much easier to know the students and get to know the teachers and help kids in a smaller setting. Definitely the socioeconomic differences are huge. There's no denying that. The poverty rate and the number of students that come from difficult home lives makes a huge difference on the school, and that's just a fact. That's just how it is. So
I know at Southern Lehigh we've had programs such as when Ryan's father came and stuff to
that was great.
show the bullying, to stop bullying, but what has been done in inner city schools where it's a much larger population, like you said, fights seem breaking out every week, which is more uncommon here. I've never seen a fight. What do you believe, what has been done in like those inner city schools?
You know, the same stuff. They do the DARE program at the middle schools. They have speakers come in, probably more often than we have here, because there is more of a need. There are mental health groups that run, like group therapy groups that run at inner city schools regularly with a different theme every day.
Like students join in the
Yeah,
like
with a
student groups, yeah.
psychologist or, you know, it's like counseling, but they have group counseling, group therapy. They have social workers on staff. They have, you know, additional psychologists on staff because the needs are greater. There's a lot of counseling that goes on in terms of assemblies and bullying, you know, that kind of stuff, like Ryan's story. The same stuff happens. Matter of fact, that same exact presenter was in Bethlehem the day before he came here. So very similar approaches, just more of it. And again, the key is to really start young and have family support.
What do you brought up poverty, but what causes a kid to truly become violent at school? Is it more social or economic?
Or do you think it's like I might take off that. Or do you think it's more of a reflection, or they're trying to like get something out type of thing?
Well, no, I don't think anyone wants to be angry all the time. I don't think any student enjoys being angry or frustrated. But I do think that a lot of times their lives are very, very difficult, and they don't have the tools to cope with, you know, as a teenager or even younger, to cope with some really major, serious adult issues, and a lot of times so many things are out of their control that they don't know how to deal with that, and so sometimes that does manifest itself in angry behavior. They wouldn't be so angry or so frustrated or so quick to lash out if everything was great all the time. So I think they're just dealing with some pretty big issues.
You brought up about being proactive, but what is done on the reactive?
According to the CDC, school violence can be prevented on the individual, relationship, and community level. At the individual level, schools must educate students on understanding their peers and how to effectively solve problems. At the relationship level, the schools can help students maintain positive relationships with their peers and their teachers. At the community level, schools must attempt to develop a better environment around the students, then leading them towards making better choices. Along with all this, schools must also take certain security measures, such as using programs like DARE, locking school doors, having cameras in certain spots within the school, using visitor badges, and performing frequent code red drills.